Pittsburgh Steelers are officially in the NFL playoffs for the 2023-2024 season. And listen, man, I am so freaking pumped for this football team to go from 7-7 and a 3% chance to make the playoffs, according to the New York Times, to a 100% chance now playing for that Lombardi Trophy, getting into the tournament. Absolutely fantastic stretch from the Pittsburgh Steelers to win these last 3 games, to get to 10-7, 10th double-digit win season in Mike Tomlin's career as the head coach of the Black and Gold. And now you're once again heading to the playoffs here in 2023. This was all sparked by the win from the Tennessee Titans, upsetting the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are now out of the AFC playoff picture with today's loss. The Titans won 28-20. Trevor Lawrence didn't actually play all that well today, had 2 interceptions, had some really big missed throws towards the end of the game. He actually had an opportunity to hit Calvin Ridley for a game-tying or potentially game-tying touchdown pass late in the game, and he missed him. So definitely a tough game for the Jaguars. I definitely think at this point that the Steelers are the better team, especially with Trevor Lawrence dealing with injuries. So I think overall the best 7 teams in the AFC did end up making it, which of course includes the Steelers. So today on the show, we're going to be talking about wild card scenarios. We're going to be talking about what happens if the Miami Dolphins win tonight on Sunday Night Football, and what happens if the Buffalo Bills win tonight on Sunday Night Football. Also, we're going to have the latest on TJ Watt's injury status, and make sure you guys stick around because Ian Rappaport says the Steelers are planning on bringing back Kenny Pickett as their starting quarterback for 2024. I'm going to tell you whether or not I think that's a good idea and whether or not I think the Steelers will actually do that. But before we get into today's news and rumors, make sure you click that thumbs up icon and like today's video if you are absolutely pumped for playoff football in Pittsburgh yet again. All right, so let's start here with Sunday Night Football tonight. Buffalo Bills travel to Miami to take on the Dolphins. The Bills beat the Dolphins in Buffalo earlier this season. Now they're going to be in Miami. This is for the division crown. Whoever wins is going to be the number 2 seed in the AFC playoff picture. Miami at 11 wins has already clinched a playoff berth. So if they lose, they will go to the 6th spot. And if the Bills lose, they will be the number 7 seed. Both teams will end up making the playoffs here. Miami, of course, still has that 11-win mark, so they will finish above the Steelers no matter what in the playoff seeding here. But Buffalo at 10 wins, if they lose, they will actually finish behind the Steelers in the playoff rankings, and the Steelers will be the number 6 seed in the AFC playoff picture heading into next week. So here is pretty much the long short of it, okay? This is probably the most likely 2 scenarios that could happen. If Miami wins tonight and they secure the AFC East crown, that means the Steelers will be the 6th seed and they will travel to Arrowhead Stadium and try to become only the 2nd team to beat Patrick Mahomes in his home stadium in the playoffs. All right. But if Buffalo upsets the Miami Dolphins tonight, or I actually don't even know who's favored in that game tonight, but if Bills are favored. So if the Bills go out, take care of business tonight, that's who the Steelers are going to be playing in Buffalo. It's probably going to be cold there. It's probably going to be lots of running the football, which probably actually favors Pittsburgh. Also, Josh Allen throws a lot of interceptions. So listen, I think no matter what happens here, I think the Steelers have certain advantages over both Kansas City and Buffalo. Tomorrow, we're actually going to be having a preview of whoever the Steelers are going to be lining up against in the wild card round this upcoming weekend. So honestly, if I get the choice between the 2 of them, I'm going to choose the Chiefs. The last time the Steelers played the Bills, they got absolutely destroyed. Josh Allen is playing some good football right now. And although I'm just happy the Steelers made the playoffs after having a 3% chance less than a month ago to make the playoffs, if I had a choice between the 2, I'd want Miami to win. And plain and simply, guys, Kansas City's wide receiver core, we've been watching this team all season long, saying eventually that wide receiver core is going to cost them another Lombardi Trophy. It might as well be against the Steelers. So if I have one team that I want to go up against in the wild card round, I'm going to pick the Kansas City Chiefs. It's also worth noting that if Miami and Buffalo tie tonight, which is unlikely, the Steelers would have to travel to Miami and play them in the wild card round. So let me know down there in the comments section, who would you rather play between the 2 most likely teams the Steelers would have to play next weekend? Type KC if you want the Kansas City Chiefs, or type BUF if you want the Buffalo Bills. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show, so YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. So now let's talk about TJ Watt here and the reports actually came from J.J. Watt here, his brother, on the CBS pregame show this morning on Sunday, saying that he has a grade 2 MCL sprain in his knee. And although this is good news, given that it's not a full ACL tear or anything like that, if you're hoping that TJ is going to be on the field next week for the wild card matchup, I would say don't hold your breath on that. This is still usually an injury that takes a number of weeks to recover from, and I do think this is going to take some time, and I would say it's highly, highly unlikely that the should-be Defensive Player of the Year here is not on the field here for this wild card matchup, and you're going to be relying on guys like Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and Marcus Golden to kind of pick up the slack for the Steelers pass rush. Now, the timetable in terms of a potential return, I think he could maybe get back for the divisional round, but listen, man, these injuries, especially with knees, it's going to be tough. He's going to be in some pain, and even if he does get back, guys, he's probably not going to be 100% the Defensive Player of the Year type player that he was this season. So it definitely hurts the Steelers roster going into the postseason to have their best player injured and probably gone for at least the first game of this tournament. But you know what? It's definitely better than a full ACL or MCL tear. So I guess we'll take the good news when we get it. So another thing that I want to say about TJ Watt is that, this guy absolutely deserves to be Defensive Player of the Year this year. I know he's only third in the betting odds right now, which is absolutely ridiculous. Both Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons are ahead of him right now in the current betting odds to win the award. But listen, man, the excuse that NFL people have been using to exclude him from Defensive Player of the Year discussions this year is that, Myles Garrett's team's in the playoffs. They got the better record, but the Steelers aren't in the playoffs. Well, guess what, guys? We just made the freaking playoffs. So that's no longer an excuse. Cleveland and Pittsburgh are both wild card teams. There's no excuse to not give this award to TJ Watt. He leads in almost every single big defensive category, and he deserves the award, in my opinion. Now, coming up here, should the Steelers go back to Kenny Pickett either for the playoffs or back in 2024 when the Steelers reset for next season? I'm going to answer these questions, kind of break down the dynamics of the Steelers quarterback situation here in just a second. But first, let's have a word from our sponsor at Factor Meals. Get started on your New Year's resolutions with today's sponsor, Factor, which is a ready-to-eat meal delivery service that takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores and the prep work and the cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered straight to your door, and with over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons, you have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your New Year's resolutions. What's even better is that Factor now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothies, juices, snacks, and more to keep you going, no matter what's on your busy schedule here to kick off your new year. They actually sent us some of their meals. It's 2 minutes in the microwave. They're done, and they're absolutely delicious. And also, they sent us some of their smoothies and juices. And by the way, guys, those are absolutely delicious as well. Stress less over meal times with Factor's no prep, no mess meals to free up time otherwise spent shopping, cooking, and cleaning up with the dishes, which we all know we hate to do. Head on over to factormeals.com/SteelersChat50. That's right down there in the bottom right of your screen, and use code SteelersChat50 to get 50% off Factor Meals today. That's code SteelersChat50 at factormeals.com/SteelersChat50 to get 50% off Factor Meals to kick off your new year. So now let's talk about the Steelers quarterback situation here. In my opinion on the quarterback situation, at least for the rest of this season heading into the playoffs, is that you have to stick with the hot hand. You have to stick with Mason Rudolph. You've won the last 3 games. This guy's made all the throws that you've asked him to make. Obviously, Mike Tomlin has a lot of confidence in him, probably more confidence in him than he had in either Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky throughout this season. And honestly, he needs to finish out this year. And really, when you look at the numbers, it's pretty easy to see why. He's got a very high completion percentage this year. He's 74.3, producer Coop is telling me. And listen, no interceptions. So the one thing that Kenny Pickett actually did pretty darn well this year was protect the football. And Mason is doing that this year while also pushing the ball down the field. I think he's got better pocket presence. I think he's got better downfield vision. I absolutely think that Mason Rudolph has earned the opportunity to be the starting quarterback for this team for the rest of the season. And I know people are going to look at that Ravens game and be like, only 152 yards, and he was only dumping things off. That means Kenny Pickett might be coming in for the playoffs, right? I just really don't think so. I just don't think it's good for the locker room to bench a quarterback that has led you to 3 straight victories and has led you to the playoffs. And listen, at this point, from my personal standpoint, if Rudy keeps playing well, you have to think about bringing him back even as a starter for the 2024 season. That really is the question here that the Steelers are going to have to weigh, especially if he continues to play well against playoff caliber defense, right? Buffalo has a good defense. Kansas City has a really good defense this year. If he puts up, 280, 300 yards passing, multiple touchdowns and no interceptions, even in a loss, right? Even if you lose like 33-30 to Kansas City or something like that, you have to think about bringing back Mason Rudolph because we just haven't seen anything of that caliber from Kenny Pickett to this point in his career. And if it was me making the decisions, if Mason Rudolph proves himself as a legitimate starting option against a top 10 caliber playoff defense, to me, he's the Steelers guy. You got to bring him back. However, Ian Rappaport said on NFL Game Day morning today that the Steelers are pretty set on Kenny Pickett being their starter in 2024. This is what he has to say. My understanding is the organization still does believe in Kenny Pickett and does not want to move on from him after the season. Still a ton of confidence that he can be a franchise starter. Now, honestly, man, I think that this really does fit the Steelers' personality as an organization. To me, it definitely seems likely that the Steelers want to be loyal to Kenny Pickett, right? They were loyal to Matt Canada for 1 year too long. It definitely seems like a serious possibility here that the Steelers end up holding on to Kenny Pickett as their starter for 1 year too long as well. Now, I know the argument is going to be, oh, well, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Tua Tagovailoa, all 3 of those guys needed 3 years to really come into their own, and that's a fair point. But I think all those guys showed flashes of what they could be on tape before they had their breakout season. Kenny Pickett has shown serious issues like pocket presence issues, downfield vision issues, accuracy issues this year that are really hard to coach out of players and are hard to fix with a new offensive coordinator. So if Kenny Pickett is the guy in 2024, I think there is little chance the Steelers are going to bring back Mason Rudolph because plain and simply, like Mason's not going to want to come back and be a backup to Kenny Pickett again. And then also, if you do bring back Mason Rudolph, from week 1 on, every time Kenny Pickett makes a bad throw, all it's going to be is, we want Mason. We want Mason. And that's just not good for Kenny Pickett if that's something that you really want to pursue moving forward. So I actually believe this report from Ian Rappaport. I think the Steelers, probably the most likely route that they're going to take is they're actually going to keep Kenny Pickett and give him another shot with a new offensive coordinator. But I do think there's still one quarterback that I think Mike Tomlin would replace Kenny Pickett with, and that is the Chicago Bears starting quarterback, Justin Fields. If they make him available, if they go out and get Caleb Williams, number 1 overall, then I definitely think Mike Tomlin will be in favor of going out and getting Justin Fields. I think he brings that star factor that the Steelers could certainly use, and that could definitely put them in title contention as soon as next year. I know Mike Tomlin is also a big fan of Justin Fields' game, went to his pro day just to pretty much watch him. So I definitely think that if Mike Tomlin had the opportunity to go and get a Justin Fields, he would take it. But otherwise, I would say the most likely scenario is that the Steelers end up keeping Pickett and bring in a veteran. So if I'd have to choose right now, if I had to predict it, look into my crystal ball here and let you know what I think is going to happen this offseason, this is how I think it's going to go down. I think they're going to hire Eric Bieniemy as their next offensive coordinator. Bieniemy is close with Tomlin. I don't think he's going to return to Washington as their offensive coordinator or head coach after firing Ron Rivera. And I don't think he's going to go back to Kansas City because he didn't get any head coaching opportunities there. So he's still looking to kind of prove himself elsewhere outside of Mahomes and Reed. So I think that Eric Bieniemy is probably most likely at this point, probably the betting favorite in my mind to be the offensive coordinator. Also, I think every Steelers fan agrees you got to cut Mitchell Trubisky. Just absolutely terrible quarterback. Don't need him on the roster next year. I also think they let Mason Rudolph walk because if you're going to keep Pickett as the starter, which is the number 4 thing on this list, I just don't think it makes sense to keep Rudolph back as a starter or as a backup just because of that, that devil or, that thing over Kenny Pickett's shoulder the entire season. Just doesn't make sense. Instead, I think they would go get a different veteran, probably Jacoby Brissett, who is the backup quarterback for the Washington Commanders this year, played really well in Eric Bieniemy's offense when given the chance. So if Kenny Pickett stinks next year and you need to replace him, you still have a guy in Jacoby Brissett that I think could actually win playoff games for you as the starting quarterback of this team if called upon. Now let me know down there in the comments section if you had to choose between these 3 men, all right? Who do you think starts for the Pittsburgh Steelers week 1 of the 2024 season? Type MR if you think Mason Rudolph proves himself to be the guy here in Pittsburgh during this postseason. Type MR, type KP if you think Kenny Pickett's going to get another opportunity to prove his worth in year 3, or you think they make the splash move here and go out and get Justin Fields. Type JF down there in the comment section. That'll be it for today's news and rumors, Steelers fans. We are in the postseason. We got another week of coverage here for this 2023-2024 season. We're going to have probably the biggest watch party of our season this weekend. We're going to be having preview for whoever the Steelers end up playing this weekend on the channel tomorrow. It's going to be an absolutely electric week. Make sure you click that subscribe button for constant Steelers updates heading into Wild Card Weekend.